Howdy, Greg Swan here from selfadoration.com. I wrote a book called ManAlive, a survival manual for the human mind, and I try to make time every Sunday to talk about issues of self-adoration. Today is Mother's Day. Happy Mother's Day, Mom. My mother will not see this because my mother is a Luddite. Does not believe in technology in any form. She has a cell phone now, finally at last, but it's a dumb cell phone. It's not a smartphone, so I cannot send email to my mother. Every once in a while I will print something out for her and mail it to her, snail mail, so she'll see it 3 or 4 days later. But needless to say, we have our Mother's Day card to him already. Thank goodness my wife, Kathleen Collins, takes care of this stuff because I could never remember to get it done in a timely fashion. She'd get her Mother's Day card next Thursday if it were up to me to send it. But happy Mother's Day to all the moms out there. And it's a matter of importance to me to acknowledge the gifts that we have from our parents. The baby boom generation in particular is very quick to criticize parents for the mistakes that they made. Well, I've got news for you. There are no parents who haven't made mistakes. All parents make mistakes. But the chances are excellent if you're able to get this video. The chances are absolutely excellent that your parents did a phenomenal job with you, that they may have made some few mistakes, but in every respect that matters, putting a roof over your head, putting food on the table, putting clothes on your back, getting you an education, making sure that you lived up to your moral obligations before you were able to see in your own behalf why that was important. Your parents took care of all of that. And the most important gift they gave you, absolutely the most important gift they gave you, was the gift of father tongue, the gift of mind, which I talk about all through ManAlive, because it's what distinguishes us as things. Human beings are distinguished from all other organisms because of father tongue, because we reason and choose in concepts. And there is nothing like this in the animal kingdom, certainly not among the higher animals, and obviously among, fish, plants, bugs, single-celled organisms. They're nothing at all like us. And this is one of my huge arguments with the world of academia in general right now, is this insistence on conflating human conceptual cognition, human rationality, conflating that with animal behavior. There are interesting things about animals. I talk about my dogs all the time because I learn so much about how minds work, how brains work, not minds, because mind is a conceptual creation. An animal doesn't have a mind. All it has is a brain. But I learn a lot about how brains work by watching my dogs and watching other animals. But I don't learn very much about how human beings behave from animals, because human behavior is conceptual in origin. It is not genetic in origin. It is not driven by brain chemistry or hormones or financial circumstances or memes or any of the other non-conceptual influences that people want to cite. These things are easy for scientists to study. Particularly, they're easy to study with lab animals, because human subjects are difficult to work with, are expensive to work with, and there are all kinds of ethical protocols that you have to live up to if you're going to work with human subjects, whereas if you're going to work with lab animals, all you have to do is keep the people for the ethical treatment of animals off your back. And the way you keep them off your back is by writing them a check. It's real easy. You can buy off any pressure group with a check. But human beings are unique, and our consciousness is unique, our style of consciousness is unique, our ability to reason and choose about conceptual information is absolutely unprecedented in the universe, and conflating us with any other thing is almost always an error. That if we're going to talk about our susceptibility to gravitation, then I'm no different from a dog in that respect. But that doesn't mean that the dog can sign a lease, or write one, or pay the rent on time. These are attributes that would only make sense with respect to human consciousness, and it's a bright line distinction. It is a huge, vast chasm of difference. And really, frankly, the biggest difference of all is the idea of the self, which is why I'm talking about self-adoration, because the self is the most important idea in your life. And it is an idea that number one, you don't share in any way at all with animals. Animals don't have anything at all like this. Animals have no self-consciousness, no consciousness of their life as a life in any way, whatever. But you don't share the self with anyone else either. This is an idea that you abstract iteratively, alone inside your own mind, and you experience that idea alone, in solitude. It is the idea with which you are most constantly thinking about, almost exclusively thinking about it. And everyone else is in the same situation as you. They're all, each one of those individual people is thinking about his own self and working on his own self and navigating his life by reference to this moral lodestone, this idea. But each one of us is doing it alone. We cannot share this experience. We cannot share introspective consciousness with another person. If you really get to know another person, know them inside and out, I mean, see them in hundreds of circumstances over a lot of time, then you can fairly reliably predict that person's behavior, and the time you spend together can have a degree of communion that feels almost supernatural to you, but it isn't supernatural. It isn't that way at all. And here we have chemical cues that may be helping you feel this way, like oxytocin, the love drug, the love hormone. You snuggle up with your best beloved, with your spouse or your lover, and the process of snuggling releases oxytocin, and you both feel better. It's the same thing that moms feel with new babies. It's that feeling of infinite love. This is a chemical reaction. I understand that. And that doesn't mean that you're not a reasoning animal. To the contrary, it just means that you have the ability to reason, but you are still an animal. And this is a huge source of stupid conflicts in philosophy. I don't think they're really stupid. I think they're intentional. But in any case, the arguments end up being very stupid because you either insist that humanity is all... I don't know what word to use because the words are all confusing. I use the word self, but I'm talking about a real idea. If someone uses the word soul, they may or may not be talking about what I'm talking about. And at that point, I really have to ask a lot of questions to find out what it is that we're talking about. But on the one hand, you have people who insist that human life is all about soul. It's all soul. And on the other hand, you have especially scientists, especially academics, insisting that human beings are basically just robots. We're just big machines, and the same causal principles that affect the sands on the beach or the stars in their orbits account for causality in human beings. And I don't have any opinion about this at all, and I really don't care about human behavior at that level of abstraction. I don't believe that the scientific explanation is adequate. I think that there's a whole lot of hand-waving in between the orbits of stars and the behavior of any willful 17-year-old kid. And I don't believe that any of those academics, number one, I don't believe that they can explain human behavior in mechanistic terms. I don't believe anyone can explain human behavior except by the means that I've outlined, and it's basically just an outline. It's a beginning. It's not the end. Human behavior is caused by cognition. It's caused by thinking. And we think in father tongue. We think in words. We think in concepts. And so any genetic Homo sapiens that does not have the power of father tongue, that has in whom has not been cultivated the gift of mind, that genetic Homo sapiens can't reason and cannot choose because it can't think. And we can only think in words, and therefore all of our complex behaviors, all of our purposive behaviors, all of our goal-seeking behaviors are going to be completely conceptual and theoretically defensible in reason. It doesn't mean that any particular person will have thought out the rational arguments behind what they're doing to any high degree of rigor, but anytime you run into a person who's doing something you don't understand, you can say, hey, why the heck are you doing that? And you should be able to get an answer in words that you could understand. And the explanation may not make sense to you, but it doesn't really have to. It has to make sense to the person who's acting. This person is acting in pursuit of his own goals and values, and the reason he gives for you is all the reason he needs. This is the way we are made.